Black girl whispers, "There's a camera." Billionaire cancels wedding in an instant. The opulence of the gala was suffocating. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like stars trapped inside marble, illuminating the faces of glamour and wealth that seamlessly blended into swarms of laughter and clinking glasses. Mariah felt like a ghost in this world, a 21-year-old college student drowning among the cheers of Wall Street elites and their shimmering partners. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress, a humble second-hand find clad in vibrant colors that seemed almost garish next to the designer gowns swaying around her. "I don't belong here," she thought, her heart a mix of awe and unease. Just beside her, her best friend, Lena, whispered breathlessly, "Can you believe it?" Mariah nodded absent-mindedly, her gaze flitting across the grand hall. And then a hushed conversation caught her attention. Leaning closer, she heard the name Claire ensconced in sentences that didn't seem quite right, phrases laced with malice. "There's a camera," she hissed, her throat tightening. The implications of those words sent shivers down her spine. Divulging this information could expose Claire's unethical dealings, a revelation that might put their lavish wedding in jeopardy. Mariah's mind raced, the internal battle beginning. If she acted, she could reveal dangerous truths that affected not just Claire's gilded life, but also the lives of countless families that might be buried under her greed. But how many layers of trouble would that unleash? Her mother's tired voice echoed in her memory. "You have to think about what's best for us." Mariah's stomach twisted. Speaking out could ruin everything her mother had worked so hard for, their modest apartment, the fragile stability they'd built. But staying silent didn't sit right either. "People are counting on me," she thought, panic inching closer, squeezing her chest tighter. Everyone around her seemed to be in a world far removed from hers, a world where her struggles felt invisible. Life in New York City had these stark divides. She felt the crushing weight of ambition standing against the jagged edges of her reality. The police sirens outside shrieking through the night reminded her of the systemic injustices she studied, yet here she stood, torn between her hunger for change and her desperate wish for security. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The weight of every choice pressed down on her, each breath eliciting a restless tangle of thoughts. She caught glimpses of Claire, radiant yet oblivious, surrounded by admirers. Enchanted by the riches that came with her name, a name that, unbeknownst to them, held secrets capable of shattering dreams. Each flicker of laughter around her felt like a nail driving deeper into the coffin of her conscience. What kind of person harnesses opportunity yet casts others aside? In this moment, standing on the precipice of accountability and silence, she felt the tension so thick it made her want to scream. The party continued, layers of shimmering facade veiling the turmoil that waged inside her. She had to make a choice, and time was running out. The thought echoed insistently. What if this illumination served as a voice for those stripped of power? But could she afford the price? As conversation swirled, the crowd erupted in applause for the couple taking the spotlight, sealing her fate with every passing moment. In that instant of celebration, as if the universe tilted, Mariah felt her resolve cracking wide open. Could she gather the courage to act, or would fear hold her captive? The path ahead teetered uncertainly, like the dimming lights. 2 steps forward, 1 breath away from everything collapsing into darkness. In the chaos of the gala, Mariah was suddenly gripped by a violent mix of fear and determination. The applause reverberated through her, an echo of her mind's tumultuous turmoil. Time seemed to slow, each heartbeat amplifying the stakes. As she surveyed the guests surrounding Claire, shimmering in their opulence, she felt an urge to shatter their polished illusions with the truth. But what if that truth dismantled her world in return? Mariah's instinct screamed at her to flee, to back away from the edge she had precariously balanced upon. Yet another voice whispered persistently from within, "This is bigger than you." Thoughts clashed like thunder in her head. Could she really reveal Claire's secrets? Just moments ago, she was so eager to merge into the background. Now, uncertainty propelled her toward the spotlight. She was part of this inexorable machinery, spinning in the web of wealth and privilege, yet yearning for something beyond. "Lena," she breathed, pulling her friend away from the crowd. "What if I say something? What if I tell them about the camera? It could bring down Claire. But then—" Her voice faltered, aware of the heavy implications. "You know what you have to do," Lena replied sharply, eyes wide with courage. "You can't let this go. You're smarter than them. You've spent years studying their systems. They've been getting away with too much for too long." Guilt hung over Mariah's conscience. Lena's faith ignited the embers of hope nestled inside her. Perhaps she could be the change, even if her own worries clawed at her insides. Yet, as she felt the crowd's vitality surround her, a deeper doubt gripped her heart. Could a single revelation reshape a landscape so distorted by greed and power? Focusing her energy inward, Mariah recalled late nights spent in cramped library corners, sifting through bureaucratic minutiae and systemic injustices. The knowledge weighed heavy, yet illuminating. She was armed, not just with facts, but with passion for justice, the kind that burned beneath her skin. There was a part of her, strong and resolute, that wanted to rise above fear and step into the light. As the laughter swirled around her, she imagined those less fortunate, the silent victims of wealth's shadow. Their cries for help were like a grim mantra in her mind. "You can't let this go," she repeated to herself, heart pounding, feet trembling. But how? How could she navigate this world of privilege wielded by people who valued suppression over honesty? The decision loomed large, challenging her understanding of loyalty, ambition, and self-worth. With a sudden rush, Mariah moved, fighting against the whirlwind of noise. She spine straightened as if struck by an electric current. The moment felt right, the burning need to act palpable. Just then, before she could lose her nerve, her eyes locked onto Claire. The moment felt pregnant with possibility, and with it, a surging clarity rose within her. This was not just a choice, it was a pivotal moment, an opportunity to redeem countless others silenced by the powerful. She would speak. As Mariah adjusted her grip on her resolve, a voice shattered the crowd, an unexpected confrontation breaking through the din. "What are you hiding, Claire?" The room turned silent, eyes flashing towards her. In that instant, reality sharpened. Mariah knew the moment had arrived where everything she had ever feared confronting could either unleash all her dreams or lead to their annihilation. But even as she prepared to articulate the truth, doubt lingered. What consequences would follow? With the weight of the world perched on her shoulders, she faced the gauntlet, drawing in a deep breath as she prepared for the battle ahead. What would become of her once the dust of this moment settled? Would she emerge as a champion of truth or as a scapegoat, embodying the damage her choices could unleash? The turning point was upon her, the stakes higher than ever. Mariah felt her throat constricting as all eyes landed on her, and the air pulsed with anticipation. The moment, so often rehearsed in her head, had finally arrived. She had envisioned this confrontation countless times, dissecting every possible scenario. But the reality eclipsed her imaginings. Claire's polished facade was beginning to crack, and the weight of her potential revelation loomed larger than ever. "What are you hiding, Claire?" The words carried an unexpected gravity, reverberating in Mariah's chest. She couldn't turn back now. The stakes were too high. Her resolve hardened against the barrage of anxiety that threatened to unravel her. This wasn't merely about speaking. It was about dismantling an entire structure built on deception and exploitation. It was about claiming her voice in a world that sought to suppress it. In the stillness that followed her bold declaration, Mariah realized the depth of her vulnerability. Claire, a titan in the world of artifice, regained her composure with a formidable glare that could freeze oceans. Yet, it was the flicker of uncertainty within Claire's eyes that emboldened Mariah further. Perhaps this moment would serve not only to expose Claire's secrets, but also to unveil Mariah's own latent power. "Mariah, don't be ridiculous," Claire replied, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of anxiety. "This isn't the place for your childish games." The audience murmured, captivated by the tension that crackled between the two women. Behind her composed demeanor, Claire sensed Mariah's resolve, like the surface of a placid lake hiding turbulent waters beneath. "No games, Claire. You know what I mean," Mariah countered, her tone sharpening, invigorated by the rising chaos. She felt a surge of clarity and purpose, unprecedented in her existence among the privileged. The essence of her years spent studying those at the top surged forward, reminding her of her worth. "Is this who you are?" Claire questioned, her incredulity morphing into intimidation. "You think you can just waltz in here and tarnish my reputation?" The accusation reverberated through the room, yet within it lay a hint of vulnerability that revealed Claire's uncertainty. "I'm here to expose the truth," Mariah responded, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Everyone here deserves to know the reality behind your facade. Your power depends on keeping people in the dark." As these words left her lips, Mariah felt a tipping point in her consciousness, each syllable amplifying her commitment to justice. Watching Claire, Mariah knew this confrontation was far from just a personal fight. It was a clash of ideals, a contest for truth against manipulation. It was the culmination of all her research and reflections, a battle for those with no voice. The world outside had been engulfed in injustice, yet here, amidst the glitz, she had an opportunity to be the beacon of change. "Call it what you want, but you can't silence me any longer," she declared, heart racing as adrenaline coursed through her veins. With every word, she felt the chains of fear unlock, revealing not only her purpose, but her place in this tangled web of lies. Suddenly, a commotion rippled through the gathered crowd, a connection forming. She wasn't alone. These people, once mere silhouettes of wealth and influence, now reflected fragmented mirrors holding glimpses of solidarity. She sensed it. The audience was drawn in, questioning their own allegiances and complicity in the systemic silence that had long been their cocoon. As the murmurs grew louder, Mariah felt a shift, a collective awakening. What if this was more than just her voice at stake? The crowd now hung on her every word, their shift of gaze indicating her role evolving from observer to agent of change. Uncertainty clawed at her. Would they turn against her if she dug deeper? The weight of their perception was heavy, and yet there was no retreat. Each moment clarified her stance. She was resolute. Any lingering doubts were washed away in the tide of resolve. Yet, in the next instant, Claire's face hardened, determination replacing fear. "You don't know what you're playing with," she shot back, eyes glinting with a fierce, cold intensity. "Threatening me could cost you more than you realize." A shiver raced down Mariah's spine. What would Claire do next? The stakes were now higher than ever, but it was too late for second guesses. She had ignited the fire. Now she had to watch it blaze. As silence reclaimed the room, Mariah prepared for the confrontation ahead. Whatever barriers she faced would force her to step deeper into the fray, a necessary risk she must embrace. With her pulse echoing in her ears, she sensed the moment had shifted irrevocably. Steeling herself, she opened her mouth to respond, a mix of vulnerability and newfound strength rising within her, ready to confront the consequences of her bold stance. Would she discover more than just Claire's secrets in this fiery exchange? As she took a step forward, she pondered what hidden complexities lay ahead, waiting to be unearthed. The silence felt like a heavy curtain, pressing down as Mariah prepared herself to strike the next chord of this tense symphony. The air pulsed with electric tension as Claire's challenge resonated, each word an unspoken warning. Mariah's heart thrummed in her chest, a steady beat of resolve that belied the chaos whirling within her mind. "Is that a threat, Claire?" Mariah's response came sharper than she anticipated, her voice ringing out as the crowd leaned in, whispering in hushed disbelief. This exchange had morphed from a mere confrontation into an elemental clash, a crucible where identities and intentions would be tested. Claire's expression darkened, her composure teetering. Just beneath the surface of her icy facade was the unmistakable flicker of fear, a revelation that invigorated Mariah. Perhaps Claire wasn't as untouchable as she once seemed. The realization sparked an inner recognition of her own immigrant power, the ability to confront those who thrive on intimidation. "You think you can intimidate me with your threats?" Mariah pressed, gathering the energy emitted from the crowd. It surged like a tidal wave, propelling her forward. The frightened whispers morphed into tentative encouragement, inciting a subtle shift in the dynamics. "No one cares about your grandstanding, Mariah. This isn't your stage," Claire retorted, the bravado in her voice masking a deeper concern. It was a calculated maneuver, attempting to redirect the crowd's focus from a real threat to dismissing Mariah as a mere nuisance. But Mariah wasn't about to concede her opportunity. "Maybe it's time everyone cared," she shot back, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and purpose. "I don't need a stage. This is my moment." She could see it in the watchers' eyes, curiosity mingled with apprehension. Every face was a reflection of shared complicity with the secrets Claire had guarded fiercely. Mariah felt their collective energy latching onto her words, stoking the embers she desperately wanted to ignite. As the temperature in the room shifted, intimacy began to weave through the confrontation. Mariah stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "This is about more than us, Claire. It's about the truth that's buried beneath all your lies and deception. You've built an empire on the backs of others, and today that stops." The declaration struck like a hammer, breaking fragile glass that had long held the decorum together. Claire's eyes narrowed, assessing the ramifications of Mariah's bold move. The billion-dollar empire was now at the mercy of a narrative she could not control, and for a brief moment it was as if the air thickened with a potent mix of dread and intrigue. "Let's not go there," Claire warned, an edge creeping into her voice. Mariah weighed her options. She could retreat, allowing Claire to exercise her power once more, or lean fully into the momentum she had created. Time slowed as she considered the weight of her next words. "Let's go exactly there," Mariah announced, a rush of determination sharpening her resolve. Unfurling the hidden reports she had gathered, the ones that outlined Claire's treachery, she felt the last vestiges of fear evaporate. The truth deserves to be seen, even if it's painful for some. The audience gasped. A shockwave of realization rippled through the room. With the twisted tale she held in her grasp, Mariah had ammunition to bring the truth crashing down. This was not merely about Claire's reputation. This was about dismantling a corrupt system that thrived on silence. But Claire's reaction would not be passive.
"Do you really think people want to see your pieces of paper?" she shot back, her voice laced with venom. "Just remember, there are consequences, Mariah." With those words, an icy shiver swept through Mariah's core. Claire was no mere opponent. She was a formidable adversary capable of retribution. As waves of anxiety washed over her, Mariah's confidence faltered momentarily. The stakes were rising, and each potential consequence weighed heavily. What if exposing Claire unleashed deeper repercussions? Mariah's mind raced with the implications. Her safety, her ambitions, everything she'd fought for hung in a delicate balance. Yet deep down, an indomitable spirit urged her forward. She was no longer just a student, no longer a passive observer. She embodied the truth she sought. As she locked eyes with Claire, two worlds collided, each woman a force propelling the narrative toward its inevitable climax. Would the truth indeed conquer the lies, or would Claire wield her power like a sword, cutting deep into Mariah's emerging narrative? With a sense of both trepidation and exhilaration, Mariah prepared for the next move in this dangerous game. The unfolding drama was about to reach unfathomable heights, and she would not shy away from the consequences of her newfound resolve. What awaited her behind the next turn? Would she take the plunge into the chaos she had ignited? Mariah's heart raced as she held the reports, the weight of her actions bearing down on her. They were no longer just documents. They were her lifeline, a manifestation of the years spent
learning and preparing for this moment. She could feel the crowd's energy shift again, an addictive mixture of fear and anticipation swirling around her as they leaned into the tension. Claire's sharp inhale echoed in Mariah's ears, a reminder of the stakes. The initial shock of her display faded, and with steely resolve she faced her adversary. Claire's bravado was faltering, and Mariah sensed the shift, a crack in the facade of certainty that had long shielded the powerful woman from vulnerability. Drawing upon her own experiences, Mariah realized that this was no mere power struggle. This was a test of integrity and courage. Every moment spent questioning her worth, every all-nighter spent working to prove herself, culminated in this singular confrontation. She was fighting not just for herself, but for others who had felt the sting of injustice, whose voices had been muffled by the weight of societal expectations. "People want the truth," she declared, confident in her assertion. "They're tired of the charade. And this," she gestured with the papers, "this is just the beginning. The truth can't be silenced." Claire's lips curled into a sardonic smile, masking her panic. "You think that's all it takes? Some reports and whispers? You're naive, Mariah. Those papers won't do a thing without the right audience." A flicker of doubt crept in, but Mariah pushed it aside. She had come too far to let fear impede her flow. "You're wrong. The truth lives and breathes in the minds of those who dare to uncover it, and I have no intention of letting it wither away." In that instant, Mariah drew on memories of her mother, who had faced countless obstacles with grace and tenacity. Her unwavering belief in justice fueled Mariah's passion, fortifying her resolve against an imposing wall of intimidation. It dawned on her that this was a platform for change, a chance to dismantle the careful lies that had shielded Claire from accountability. Mariah began to speak about the systemic issues woven through Claire's empire, offering specific examples, connecting the lines of exploitation and greed. Each word gained traction. Her voice resonated like a drumbeat, pushing her narrative forward. She could feel the shift in the room, a palpable tightening of collective awareness. The crowd was no longer simply spectators. They were participants, engaged in a shared awakening. Yet beneath the surface of her mounting confidence lay an unsettling realization. Claire was not just an obstructive force. She was a significant player in a larger game, one filled with potent adversaries and intricate webs of influence.
As Claire remained fixated on regaining control of the narrative, Mariah had to ask herself how far she was willing to go, what sacrifices she would need to make. Consequences? Mariah's voice cut sharply into the air again. Every choice has a consequence, Claire, but ignoring the truth brings far graver costs. An electric silence fell, the crowd swaying between loyalty and newfound clarity. The milieu was charged, a crackling promise of change woven through.
Mariah's fearless stance. Despite the adrenaline coursing through her, doubt lingered like a shadow, whispering fears of retaliation, of the personal risks she'd face ahead. Then it hit her. It would be safer to step back, to conform to the expected, but it would also mean handing Claire back the power she had momentarily grasped. Choosing safety over truth felt like betrayal. As the weight of her dilemma settled like lead in her stomach, Mariah locked eyes with Claire once more. The mask had slipped. She could see the fear in Claire's gaze, less of the truth being exposed and more the inevitability of losing control over what she thought she held tightly. "Let's end this dance, shall we?" Mariah challenged, her voice steady, while internal uncertainty threatening to shake her resolve. "You might have the upper hand now, but I won't let you control the narrative any longer." For the first time, Mariah felt the exhilaration of her own potential. With her next words, she was about to take a deep plunge into a world where the stakes were higher than ever. What would she unleash within herself, and could she handle the fallout from what she was about to ignite? The confrontation had become a mirror, reflecting her ambitions, her fears, and the hard choices that lay ahead. It was now or never. The next move was crucial, and in the blink of an eye, the course of both their lives could shift dramatically. As the tension escalated, Mariah took a deep breath, knowing she was on the precipice of a transformative journey. Would she break the chains that bound her to fear, or would she find herself ensnared in the web of a much larger conflict? The moment of truth loomed just beyond her reach. Mariah's pulse quickened as she braved Claire's steely glare. The crowd's collective breath held, ripe with anticipation. The stage was set, and she was the unexpected protagonist in a drama that could reshape her destiny. Summoning every ounce of conviction, she let the papers fall into a crisp stack on the table, their edges aligning precisely. It was more than merely a physical statement. It was a declaration of purpose. The murmurs surged back, and Mariah allowed herself to drink in the energy generated by the gathered crowd. This was her moment, not only to expose the shadows within Claire's empire, but to confront her own fears head-on. "Do you know what they teach you when you have nothing left to lose?" Mariah began, her voice clear yet tinged with intensity. "They teach you to reach for the truth. They teach you that power isn't silencing dissent, it's in creating discourse." Each word sliced through the lingering shadows of doubt, reinforcing her determination. Claire's facade began to crack further, vulnerability creeping into her demeanor as Mariah pressed on. "You may have built your empire on lies and deception, but what is it worth when the truth emerges? Your reign might be an illusion, but my truth is tangible." With every heartbeat, Mariah's words gained strength, igniting a fire within her that had been smoldering, waiting for the right moment to erupt. The audience shifted, their allegiances uncertain, yet increasingly captivated by her fearless stance. The moment carried her thoughts to the sacrifices she had made, late nights filled with deadlines, choosing to be the voice for those unheard. Her life had led her here, an intersection of her own journey and the injustices around her. But as she felt the thrill of her empowerment, doubt crept back, cold and pervading. What if this wasn't just a confrontation, but an unraveling? What if Claire had allies, connections that could launch retaliatory strikes at her aspirations? The unknown loomed ominously, a dark cloud challenging her resolve. Still, this wasn't merely about her. It was about justice, the very essence that had fueled her climb against all odds. A greater purpose surged inside, and Mariah focused on the faces in the crowd. She saw the weight of their struggles and the glimmer of hope beginning to unfold. This was not her battle alone. It was collective, a movement waiting to happen. Everyone deserves their moment, Mariah declared, fixing her gaze firmly on Claire. Everyone deserves a voice, and today it's my turn to speak, to shine a light on the wrongs you thought you could hide. The words echoed, even surprising her. It was a personal revelation. She was more than just a participant in the fight against injustice. She was becoming a leader, someone willing to confront not just Claire, but the very structures that had been designed to silence her. With each passing second, her confidence transformed, morphing her fear into resolve, each breath deeper, each heartbeat more purposeful. Claire, flustered and off balance, attempted to regain control as she spat out venomous words meant to intimidate. "You think this is a game, Mariah? The real power lies with those who can make the rules, and you're still playing by someone else's agenda." "Maybe it's time we rewrite those rules," Mariah shot back, her voice steady and sure. The crowd's murmur shifted again, now a ripple of agreement, and she could sense the collective yearning for change. Facing Claire felt like gazing into a vortex of toxic power and corruption. This moment demanded more than defiance. It required strategy, deep introspection, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. She was uncovering layers of herself, a leader, a truth-teller, a warrior. But what next? How far would she confront the abyss that Claire represented? Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, pulling her attention away from Claire's flustered face. The screen illuminated with a message, "It's time to go public. Do it now." An unexpected twist in the narrative left Mariah reeling. What had she just unleashed? The stakes ratcheted higher as her choices became intertwined with the potential for chaos. Transformative change awaited, but at what price? Mariah clenched her hands into fists, knowing the course ahead would test
Her like never before. This was only the beginning. Would she tear down the masquerade and emerge unscathed, or would it cost her everything she held dear? As her pulse raced in anticipation, the sound of her heartbeat echoed, urging her to seize the moment. "Let's see just how strong you are, Mariah," she whispered to herself, before facing Claire once again. The climax was unfolding, and nothing could prepare her for the fallout that was about to erupt. The air was electric with anticipation, every heartbeat amplifying Mariah's sense of urgency. All eyes were on her, and at that moment she felt time stretch and sharpen. She had a choice to make. Would she follow the wave of emotions swirling around her, or would she seize the moment in calculated defiance? As she stepped closer to the audience, the stark reality of her decisions weighed heavily on her shoulders. The message flashing on her phone was a clarion call, a challenge to take a leap into uncharted territory. Going public meant exposing herself, opening doors that, once ajar, could not be closed. The thought was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Now, she thought, the single word echoing in her mind. Do it now. Realizing that the arena had transformed into a battleground, Mariah breathed deeply and addressed the crowd as if she was making an indelible mark on history. "It's time to dismantle the narrative you've created, Claire. It's time to show everyone exactly how your power works, behind closed doors, hidden from plain sight." The crowd shifted, their whispers morphing into an energy that could not be contained. "I'm not afraid of what you might do to me," she continued, her voice unwavering, "because I have something you can never control, my truth." With each word, Mariah felt a resilience she had never known before rising within her. This was beyond a confrontation with Claire. It was a challenge to an entire system that had continually sought to define her. She could feel the eyes of the audience, hungry for her narrative, eager for justice, wanting to witness a shift. Everyone deserves to know what's been happening, she insisted, her pulse matching the cadence of her empowerment. You may hold power now, but I wield a truth that you can't suppress. As she spoke, Mariah began drawing on her past experiences, those late nights filled with research, the long days where she chose integrity over comfort. Each step had sculpted her into this moment of clarity, and she was ready to unleash her voice. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's expose the lies, the manipulation, and the web of deceit you've spun. While you think you're above everyone else, I know there are countless others standing in the shadows, waiting for a chance to expose you. A faint rustle echoed through the crowd. Murmurs of agreement surged, emboldening her further. She could sense their collective yearning for authenticity, and with it, a newfound determination sparked within her. Then, as if sensing her
Momentum, Claire countered, her facade fraying even more. This isn't just about you, she snapped, desperation evident in her tone. You have no idea what retribution looks like, darling. You're playing a dangerous game. Mariah only smiled, confidence flooding her senses. This was no longer a battle for justice. It was a declaration of war against oppression, a refusal to be silenced by threats or intimidation. Perhaps it's time you learned what happens when you underestimate your opponents. Before she could gather her thoughts, a sudden flash from a camera caught her attention. The realization hit her. Someone had been filming the encounter. The gravity of this new development sent shockwaves through her, heightening the urgency. She glanced at Claire, whose expression was shifting, scrambles of disbelief blending into anger. What you thought was hidden is about to go public, she declared. The truth, our truth, emerges now. As she felt the weight of the moments building around her, Mariah recognized the cusp of a potential revolution. The mere act of unveiling the truth had already begun to shake the foundations of Claire's world. It brought with it a decisive moment of clarity for Mariah. She wouldn't just dismantle Claire's empire. She would rise in lieu of the collapse, reclaiming her narrative and the stories of others like her. Her heart raced as she stood poised at the edge, ready to take the plunge. Behind that leap lay a chance for transformation, a chance to redefine everything. But as she prepared to make her ultimate move, uncertainty flickered in the back of her mind. What if this public exposure had unforeseen consequences? What if Claire had an ace up her sleeve, a method to turn the tables against her? What lies ahead could change everything, she thought, glancing around the faces fixed on her, filled with hope and trepidation. With a resolve hardening like steel, Mariah turned her gaze back to Claire, determination etched on her features. The time has come to face the truth. Together, we'll see how this story ends. The stakes had never been higher, and as the tension reached a palpable peak, only time would reveal the cost of unveiling the truth. The moment hung in the air like the calm before a storm, electric and uncertain. As the last syllable of her speech faded, an intimidating silence settled over the crowd. Mariah's heart raced, the adrenaline surging through her veins like wildfire. She had stepped into the abyss, and now there was no retreat. The damning evidence of Claire's transgressions was now in the open, and it was up to her to navigate the fallout. But amidst the palpable tension, a primal instinct took over. Mariah hunched slightly, her gaze sweeping the faces of the audience. Questions flared in her mind like neon lights. Had she crossed a line? What came next? The vulnerability she once felt began to morph into a coiling readiness, fueled by the thrill of her own audacity. She caught the eye, two of her right,
A reporter, perhaps, someone who would amplify her message beyond this immediate space. Mariah felt a connection, a shared understanding that ignited the flicker of inspiration. Moments like this didn't merely alter individual lives, they had the potential to upend entire systems. What if she could turn this incident into a rallying cry, a catalyst for much-needed change? As her resolve solidified, Claire's face twisted in a mixture of outrage and disbelief. Gone was the woman who exuded power. She now appeared cornered, uncharacteristically human. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Claire spat, a stark contrast to the calculated tone she usually wielded with precision. But it was clear to Mariah she had rattled the cage. The foundations Claire had built with intimidation were starting to crumble. A weight settled like iron in Mariah's gut as she considered the potential repercussions of her actions. What if Claire retaliated in ways that weren't just verbal or strategic? Threats loomed like shadows on the horizon, dark, insidious, and capable of tarnishing not only Mariah's reputation, but the lives of those who stood in solidarity with her. The thought made her pause, but only momentarily. What had been set in motion could no longer be contained. "Your lies have been exposed," Mariah declared, her voice rising, not just to fill the silence, but to assert her strength. Turning her attention back to the cameras flashing around the room, she willed herself to remain calm. Each shutter click was a reminder of the momentous shift she had sparked. She wasn't simply fighting for herself, she was becoming a voice for others who had long been silenced. The crowd began to react, voices mixed, some murmuring encouragement, others continuing the familiar din of disbelief. A sense of camaraderie ran through the air, the collective energy rapidly transforming her solitary battle into a wider movement. But even as determination swelled within her, the nagging doubt of retaliation nipped at her heels. She had jumped from one precarious position into another, each possessing its own dangers. Mariah's pulse thrummed with urgency. She glanced at her phone, the names of allies flashing across the screen. It dawned on her that now was the time to strategize and build a support system around her. She couldn't tackle this storm alone. Gathering evidence was critical. She needed to document every interaction, every threat, and every supportive voice that came forward. Resolutely, she opened a new message to a trusted friend within the media sphere. "I need help to release this story properly," she typed furiously, her thoughts racing with different angles toward telling the truth. Supporting evidence, strategic information. Her phone became a lifeline, whispers of her growing network forming, even as she stood on a knife's edge. "Trust me, Claire," she said, her eyes narrowing back at the CEO. "This isn't over yet. You may have thought you won before, but I'm just getting started." As Claire seethed, Mariah sensed the tide begin to change. Every second brought new clarity. Each word she exchanged with Claire solidified her resolve. However, just as Mariah took a step back, a shout pierced through the crowd. "What are you going to do next?" The question reverberated in her mind, full of implication and challenge. Her next move could determine not only her fate, but the trajectory for others like her. Mariah drew a deep breath, realizing she stood on the precipice. This moment held the potential to redefine her life against a backdrop of power, deceit, and revelation. Yet uncertainty rattled at her core. How far was she willing to go? And what lay in wait for her if she pushed beyond the boundaries that Claire had set? Her pulse quickened as she readied herself for whatever came next. The true test loomed, and the lines drawn on betrayal and loyalty were sharper than ever. Each decision would either drag her deeper into the fray or propel her toward freedom. In that fractured silence, Mariah knew one thing for certain. The fight for her identity and her truth had only just begun. Mariah stood at the crossroads of her own transformation, adrenaline pulsing with every heartbeat. The question shouted from the throng penetrated the haze of uncertainty clouding her thoughts. What was she going to do next? The world felt heavy, yet the moment lit a fire within her, a clear directive crystallizing in her mind. Her purpose had shifted. This wasn't merely about Claire or the corporate clout she wielded. It was about aligning her truth with action. She surveyed the crowd once more, sensing the growing anticipation. Excitement rippled through the collective. What if this was more than just a confrontation? What if it evolved into a catalyst for change? With newfound conviction, she focused inward. This was a chance to define her narrative, to reshape the perceptions that had long bound her. As the buzz of conversation swelled, she decided. Clarity was key. Biting back the urge to retreat into the shadows of doubt, she noted how the moment called for boldness. Topic A, clarity. Topic B, empowerment. She had to mobilize her resources effectively, piecing together bits of information to construct a compelling case against Claire's manipulation. Mariah's fingers flew over her phone, sending messages to her network of allies. Concise, purposeful exchanges that outlined her strategies while leaving room for feedback. Suddenly, her phone vibrated with a message. It was from Aaron, a journalist known for investigative reporting. "I'm in," it read. "Let's structure this story right and hit back at Claire with everything we've got." A wave of relief washed over her. Aaron understood the gravity of the situation and, more importantly, the intricacies involved in crafting an impactful narrative. "Meet me tonight, 7 p.m. at Café Noir. We'll brainstorm angles," Mariah quickly replied, her thoughts racing towards the untold possibilities. This was the time to solidify alliances and utilize the resources she had once deemed insufficient. As she bolstered her resolve, she could feel her nervous energy morph into palpable determination. Each word she typed felt more like an act of defiance, a commitment to dismantling the oppressive structures that had previously marginalized her voice. She needed to show everyone, starting with those at the venue, that she had emerged unbroken. If Claire's betrayal had cast shadows over her identity, then it would be her job to illuminate them. Mariah glanced up as the room began to stir. Claire was retreating, almost imperceptibly. In the distance, whispers rose, highlighting her name, her actions, her boldness. That was it. Her story was solidifying, becoming a guiding light for others. Suddenly, the fear of retaliation diminished. What mattered was the story she was creating around defeat, around victory. She envisioned the headlines, "Courage in the face of power." The idea sent chills of excitement through her spine. Mariah rallied her thoughts, determining how to harness this storm she had conjured. She'd shift the focus, turn the page from mere survival to telling the truth. Stories owned power, and she now had a very powerful story. But beneath the surface, concern still lingered. Claire wouldn't give up easily. She was calculating, dangerous. The thoughts swarmed her mind, forcing her to confront the risk of exposure. In her line of sight, she spotted Claire's assistant hovering at the entrance, both wary and intrigued. Mariah narrowed her eyes, plotting how to unearth more about Claire's web of influence. This was the beginning of a deeper intelligence gathering. "Tonight, we plan, we fight," Mariah whispered to herself, urgency crackling. This was no longer just about confronting Claire. It was a game of chess, each piece strategically important. She needed to think ahead, make choices that might not only shield her, but empower others. As she prepared to face the gathering, the crowd's anticipation seemed to swell like a living thing, pressing against her. She took one last breath, knowing the stakes had been raised. There was no turning back now. The camera lenses flicked toward her, a spotlight on her burgeoning strength. But in the middle of her concentration, another voice ducked beneath the clamor. Someone had just whispered, "You have something to hide, Claire." That tension, that vulnerability of Claire's, uncovering, what could it reveal? Mariah turned, the gears in her mind spinning. With each choice shifting the dynamics, approaching treachery promised to escalate. Would it lead her toward salvation or further entrench her in danger? The battle had only just begun, and each move would count. She felt the weight of expectation as the crowd leaned forward, awaiting her next act. The world, her world, was watching. What would she choose next, and how would she navigate the storm she'd unleashed? The answer might redefine not only her life, but the lives of many. What lay ahead was a tension-laden path infused with possibilities, each decision a potential turning point. Mariah stood resolutely at the center of the room, awash in the
spotlight of impending resolution. The air crackled with tension as whispers of her confrontation with Claire laced the atmosphere. She had traversed a turbulent road, fraught with fear and self-doubt, yet now clarity coursed through her veins. In the face of adversity, she was transforming from an intimidated observer into a formidable agent of change. With every heartbeat, Mariah summoned the strength that had lingered within her, waiting for this precise moment to emerge. Gone were the thoughts of retreat. She was no longer merely a student at a lavish gala. She had unearthed her voice, her truth, and with it an undeniable power to confront the systemic injustices she fought against. "Today, I leave behind vulnerability," she proclaimed, addressing the audience, recognition igniting each syllable. "I step forward as the embodiment of empowerment, and I refuse to be a puppet within the narratives crafted by the privileged." The crowd reacted, the energy shifting palpably as murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Mariah felt the surge of support. Their encouragement propelled her forward, fortifying her resolve. She was no longer just speaking for herself. She was voicing the collective yearning for transparency, accountability, and justice. "What you don't realize, Claire, is that your empire stands on the unstable foundation of deceit," Mariah declared, her tone unwavering. "With every secret, you create cracks that will ultimately bring your facade crumbling down. The truth is here, and it will be seen." Claire, faltering under the weight of exposure, stirred feebly. But Mariah pressed on, a sense of authority blooming within her. This wasn't merely a confrontation anymore. It was a revolution of self-discovery, a proclamation of her worth. She dared to unmask the weight of the power play that had long overshadowed her existence, and the stakes of that revelation began to solidify into a fierce recognition of her influence. Stepping closer to the crowd, Mariah's passion ignited each word as she rallied them behind her cause. "You've turned lives into pawns, and for too long we've accepted the roles dictated by fear. Today, we shift the narrative. Your time of intimidation is over, Claire." In that moment, Mariah understood that her metamorphosis was profound. Not only had she chosen to stand against Claire's oppressive empire, but she had also embraced her identity as an advocate for the disenfranchised. The satisfaction of her growth stirred within her, a mixture of exhilaration and deep connection to her purpose. The crowd upheld her, their murmurs morphing into affirmations. Every eye was fixed on her as if she were a lighthouse guiding them through the storm of lies. Mariah realized she wasn't alone. She was standing at the helm, wielding knowledge, competence, and a steadfast belief in justice. Claire's facade crumbled further as doubt seeped into her demeanor. "You won't win," she retaliated, her voice tinged with desperation. But Mariah simply shook her head, undeterred. This was her breakthrough, a moment of profound fulfillment that transcended her initial hesitations. "No, Claire," she countered firmly, "I've already won by reclaiming my voice and harnessing the truth. Now we will expose the injustice that festers in the shadows of your ambition." As she turned back to the gathered audience, certainty wrapped around her like armor. "This is our time for change," she articulated, power radiating from her presence. She included specifics, plans for mobilizing support, outreach beyond the gala, and ways to ensure that transparency replaced deception. Each word articulated a vision of hope, a rallying cry for the community she had long sought to uplift. As the applause crescendoed, Mariah felt a sensation of fulfillment rise within her, solidifying her transformation. She had moved from uncertainty to conviction, embodying resilience against a monolith pouring forth intimidation. Recognition filled the room as the audience absorbed her essence, their capacity for belief intertwining with the truth she was committed to exposing. "This is just the beginning," she promised, her voice steady yet invigorated. "We will stand together. We will not be silenced. Our stories will reshape the narrative, dismantling the chains of oppression." And just like that, she had accomplished what she set out to achieve: defiance against fear and victory over her self-imposed limitations. As Mariah stepped down from that moment of triumph, she carried the weight of authenticity, assurance tinged with the earnest pursuit of justice. The chaos of the gala no longer felt suffocating. The once ominous crystal chandeliers now illuminated a path toward a new direction, a dynamic future brimming with hope. Her heart swelled with unrestrained confidence as she prepared to move forward, embracing the challenges and opportunities yet to come. This was her transformation, a metamorphosis born of courage, framed through the lens of justice, and solidified by the powerful connections forged in her fight for truth. At this critical threshold, Mariah emerged not only recognized as a leader, but as the embodiment of an unyielding spirit ready to change the world. Now is your moment. You need to subscribe now to our channel so that you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more hearts. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Mariah's journey. And please share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of personal growth and truth. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.